Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror, movies, and awesomeness. This week we continue our Haunted House retrospective with the Alejandro Amenabar ghost story, The Others, starring Nicole Kidman. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, writer of the Ben 10 comic series from IDW. With me from Austin is Drew Edwards, writer of the long-running Halloween Man, now from Monsterverse Comics, and a contributing writer to Rockabilly Online and Monsterverse's Tales from the Grave. Say hello, Drew.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome back. Also in Austin, Tony Salvaggio, writer of the Victorian mech comic Clockworks from Humanoids, and Cyclone, the manga from Right Stuff and Tokyo Pop, and lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. And also in Denver with color commentary, as always, host of the mom-oriented podcast Pod Moms, attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome back. Okay, The Others. The Others, I don't even know how to give, I'm going to give a very brief introduction of this, and then we're going to go into it. The Others is a 2001 psychological supernatural horror film written, directed, and scored by Alejandro Amenabar, starring Nicole Kidman and Fionnuala Flanagan. I'm sure I got that name wrong. The Observer said that this is inspired by, or at least reckons to, the 1898 novella Turn of the Screw, and I think there's some argument to be had there. I think this movie is reminiscent of a lot of things. That's as much of the Wikipedia as I'm going to give you to this, because I'm not going to read everybody a whole synopsis because we're going to get into it. I want to go right into first impressions, and I'd love to hear from the group whether you're returning to this movie or if it's your first time seeing the movie, and we might also talk about if you had a hard time finding it, because that's always interesting to me is as we dig into these older things, how hard it is or how easy it is to get your hands on it. So let's go. Tony, Julia, Drew, and then I'll go. All right, Tony, first impressions, The Others.
I like it a lot. It's really, it's done really, really well. It is actually, I guess, the second time I've seen it. Personally,
did you see it in the theaters the first time, or?
Yeah. Rain, I think my wife and I saw it at the theater. Rain saw it at the theater, and it's really creepy and done really, really well. I tend to usually watch movies that have a twist, kind of like this. I'm less likely to watch them a second time unless I am watching it to kind of soak in the atmosphere, which this has a lot. So,
this has pea soup thick atmosphere.
Yeah, and it's done really well, but it's not, for me, it's hard to watch it again. Like, I like to have it, I think we're going to go into that later, but it felt a little colder this time due to the fact that I'd seen it and kind of knew what was going to happen. But It's a really, really well-made ghost story, and it's beautifully done. So,
Julia, what are your first impressions of The Others?
I did see it back in the day, but I've forgotten a lot about it. I just remembered kind of the mood. I didn't even particularly remember how it ended, and so I can kind of speak from, like the first impressions perspective of that. But mostly I want to say that I've been saying this, it's probably over and over, I've said it now. I love movies where special effects just aren't really used hardly at all. I mean, I think it's fantastic, horror movies. I think it's fantastic that pretty much everything that makes this movie good is in the atmosphere of it and the acting and the directing. I mean, it's obviously brilliant. It's just the mood, the music. Did you know that the director, and I'm trying not to call him, I keep wanting to call him another director's name, so I'm like, I need to actually read it as I'm saying it. Okay, Alejandro Amenabar, because I keep wanting to call him Almodovar. Yeah, right. Alejandro Amenabar. He is actually also wrote the music.
Yes.
So as he's doing the film, he was just like playing or even humming the music as they were kind of shooting stuff, so they would have that mood. And the lighting and the just the, I'm sure, fog machines or whatever they used. all that stuff, the silence, it's just all of it. I mean, I think so. To me, it's all about the ambiance of the film. That's what makes it so brilliant.
No,
very, very.
I saw an article recently about how, and I agree with it, how a lot of times it was for writing, but I think it can apply to horror and a lot of things, that when you place restraints on yourself, like, for example, effects, that it can make things stronger because you have to actually think about that.
Right.
And you don't have you have to have a plan for that. And I think that movies that can do it without, blowing the budget on CG or whatever, or even practical effects sometimes, have, there's something pure to that, and I think it can be stronger. It's not, you don't have to do that, but, we keep going back to the haunting. I think I agree with you.
Right.
Absolutely, that kind of having not having to rely on that makes it stronger and creepier in a lot of ways.
Or if you task if I understood what you said there, because I think I lost you for a quarter of a sec, when you said you make a decision not to use special effects, it's sort of like how people say that Eddie Murphy was funnier on Saturday Night Live because he had all these crazy creative constraints from the networks, and so consequently he had to get really clever. And that's true. I mean, imagine trying to do a ghost story on stage. If I said, I want you to make a ghost story that makes people shiver and really, really lean forward and get into the story, but you're going to have to do it on stage, so your effects are going to be seriously curtailed. You have to think long and hard. What am I going to do that'll freak people out? That's wonderful, but it's a way long first impression, Julia. Lovely. Drew, what are your thoughts? You're new to this movie, right?
This is the first time I've ever seen it. I remember when it came out actually kind of being a little meh to it because I thought it looked very derivative, particularly of M. Night Shyamalan's film The Sixth Sense. And lo and behold, when I actually watched it, I was right, which isn't to say, this is going to sound for a second that I didn't like it, but bear with me. This is a very derivative film, and in fact, within watching the movie, because I have seen, The Sixth Sense and a lot of other of these types of horror films, I figured out the twist ending pretty quickly. However, because of that, I think I had a more enjoyable experience because I was able to sort of watch this as a kind of postmodern ghost movie, which it can be viewed at, and I actually think it was a lot more enjoyable viewing it that way. And I think this is, like Julie was saying, this is a beautifully shot movie. It's got there's lots of fog, and this house is so spooky, and the people that they hired to play the servants just have these great faces. I mean, these are the sort of people that would have been great back in the Hammer days as like character actors in an old Hammer movie. And
yes.
So this is a fun
Mr.
movie to watch.
Would have been very much at home, like in any given Hammer movie.
Oh yeah, completely.
The guy who runs the bar.
They chose him, Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, who was the executive producer of this film. They actually handpicked him because they'd seen his stage work and just liked him so much.
Wow.
Well, he was great. I actually like this movie better than The Sixth Sense because despite it kind of relying on the twist, there's still a lot here. This is a pretty meaty movie even without it. There's a lot of religious imagery. It's a very sad movie. Like, it's very tragic when you think about everything that's going on. But great performance by Nicole Kidman. The child actors here are really, really, a lot of times kids in the movies can be obnoxious. These kids are put in really good performances. This is a top-notch movie.
Yeah. So my only first impression, and then we'll get right into it, it's funny you should say that you were thinking about The Sixth Sense. Sixth Sense drove you not to want to watch it. Sixth Sense is what you were thinking about when you were watching this. And The Sixth Sense by M. Night Shyamalan did not enter my head one time when I was watching this movie. Now, I agree with you, it's derivative, but I think I'm so overwhelmed by the look of the movie, the big state house, the fog, the grounds, the ghosts, all that stuff, that I felt as though what I was seeing, and I like what you said about it being a postmodern ghost story, I felt like they were jumping back and doing a big sort of homage to things like, well, like we mentioned, The Turn of the Screw, which was filmed as a movie called The Innocents, or, what else? Basically anything that takes place. Look, that Dark Shadows movie that we watched, where they move into a giant house like this, and they're haunted by prior generations. Actually, any big dark house that's haunted by mournful ghosts, I felt like this movie was a sort of homage / commentary on those. I agree with you that it's postmodern because, in a sense, once you are bought into the notion that this is a traditional ghost story, it turns it all on its head with that twist. But I didn't care about the twist other than there's something cathartic about hearing it all be revealed. In the same sense that if you have a movie where, let's say there's a movie where you know that one character is the long-lost illegitimate daughter of another character, and there's a mystery, is she or isn't she the daughter, and then of course in the end, there will be a big reveal where he'll say, yes, I'm your father, I abandoned you, I'm sorry, all that. That's coming. You'll be disappointed if it doesn't happen. And that's the same thing here.
Talking about the blacklist?
I'm not talking about the blacklist. What? God, we go straight to James Spader.
Well, that's the blacklist plot, what you just described.
Okay, yes. But there have been illegitimate daughters before James Spader started siring them. Okay, let's get right into the story. We started to talk about it a little bit. What we have here, very briefly, we have an enormous house, which is, and I didn't understand anything about what this meant when I was watching the movie, but this enormous house is actually on an island. We never really see the rest of the island. All we see is the vast leafy grounds of this vast house, which is on an island in the English Channel.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in Jersey, but it was actually filmed in Spain.
And
the house.
And Spain stands in for an awful lot in classic horror. And it's this enormous house that is fogged in, and it is lived in by this woman and her two precocious children, who have what I would call porphyria, no,
it's got a different name. It's called, let me look at here what it was called again. It's called Xeroderma pigmentosum. They call it XP.
Which is to say,
real life.
They have an aversion to sunlight.
It's a deathly allergy. I mean,
yeah.
they will get not just sunlight, but any kind of bright light. They'll get like third-degree burns. They'll get skin cancer just from that exposure.
So it's a genuine allergy. And so anyway, this woman lives there with her two children who have this hereditary affliction. And they've been alone ever since Dad went off to World War I. I'm sorry, World War
II.
Yeah, World War II, and that's significant because, of course, the island that they're living on was occupied by the Nazis, but they managed to hold on to the house, and that's a point of pride. But they have no servants, and so the story begins with the arrival of three quiet servants who are going to help run the house for them, because all the other servants have run off.
And so from the get-go, you have the question of, what happened to the servants? Why did they leave? That question is never answered, I don't think, unless you guys...
pretty well.
We can,
what was the answer?
Once everything's revealed, we can say that, once...
She says that after the night when she went mad, the servants all left.
I thought they left before that happened, and that's why she went mad. I thought that the servants left. The servants left, and she went mad because they left.
Okay,
I think she was mad because she was pining for her supposedly departed husband.
Right.
I think you said it. You're right, Julia. That's a good point. They left first. She went crazy because she was frustrated, and so then everything happened.
Right, but like I say, though, I'm still left with unsatisfied that we never found out if the servants Did the servants die? Did they walk away? Because she says they vanished into thin air. That's the only explanation she
I
gives.
think they. I mean,
my
I think
my whole
she does
thing
say
is I
she said
think
they left in the night.
they died, and she doesn't quite realize what's going on. Because I really
You think they
feel
died? What did they die of, though? Why would all of them die?
No, not the servants. I think she doesn't. I think the servants probably stopped working there because she was dead and the kids were dead.
So you think the servants come after? So you're just giving away the twist right there. Okay. Well, anyway, so the twist is.
No, we just talked about it. But wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
Back up.
What did Tony say, though?
We've jumped ahead to the end, and I
that's
try to give.
There's no way to really talk about this movie without talking about the twist.
No, that's not my point. What I mean is, at this particular, in these few seconds that I'm moving my mouth right now, I want to at least, in order, say sort of what happens so we can get to exactly the question you had.
Okay.
So, yes, servants come in. They start to see a lot of ghosts. Ghost. We're waiting for Dad to come home. We have some drama.
We don't see ghosts, no. You can't can I do the description? Because you get to always do them.
Yes.
They don't see ghosts. Okay, so the servants show up and they say nothing. They say, hi, we're here. And she goes, oh, you must be here because of the notice and you're the new servants. So they're like, well, okay. And so eventually, at some point later, she realizes that her notice for servants had never gotten picked up in the post box. So how did they get here? They said, well, we used to live here, and so we just showed up, hoping that maybe we could come back. So she's like, okay, that's all fine. And so then the daughter is the one seeing ghosts. We don't ever see any ghosts. The daughter is seeing quote unquote people, whatever, not necessarily ghosts, but just people around. But Nicole Kidman's character just hears noises and has doors slam and things like that, and curtains keep getting open even though she's insisted that they be closed. Doors are being open even though she's locking them. And so it's that kind of behavior that's going on. And she continues to go into denial. Meanwhile, the husband has been gone at war, and they don't know what's happened to him. So she decides she needs to go get the house blessed by a priest. And so she's going to go into town and orders the servants to find the tombstones because apparently there's a little cemetery somewhere on the property, but she's never found it. So as she's leaving, the servants say, do you think is this okay that she's leaving? And they're like, don't worry, the lady says, don't worry, the fog won't let her go. And he's like, oh yeah, that's right, the fog. And she says, when should we reveal, or one of them says, when should we reveal all this? And they're like, soon enough. By the way, check it out. One of the tombstones is showing. He's like, oh, yeah. So the guy leaves over. So clearly they know what's going on. They are covering it up. Meanwhile, she runs into her husband in the woods, in the foggy woods, where she can't see anything but her husband. He is played by one of the Doctors Who. Yes. What's his name, Jason?
Christopher Eccleston.
Christopher Eccleston,
the Ninth Doctor.
And he's completely out of it. Like, he doesn't know where he is or why, really. And then he kind of knows. I mean, he knows his family, but he's very...
And by the way, we're going to come back to this in a sec. After you're done with this recitation, we're going to come back to this because there's something very surreal about these people finding one another.
Yeah, well, I do. I want to talk a lot about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so she brings him back, and he basically just gets in bed, doesn't come out. But he does talk to his kids, and at one point, Nicole Kidman sees her daughter in her First Communion gown, and then realizes that there's an old lady in that gown, but with her daughter's voice. So she attacks the old lady, but it's the daughter's voice coming out of it. So she's attacking her, and the daughter runs off and insists on talking to her dad. So she tells her dad off screen what happened, quote unquote, that night when Mother went mad. And so he says, she told me what happened, and I can't remember exactly how that conversation goes, but he says, by the way, I'm leaving.
Right.
And she's like, what do you mean you're leaving? He's like, I've got to go to the front. And she says, well, the war's over. He's like, yeah, that's just how it is. So he leaves, and the kids decide to go after him in the night. So they go into the garden looking for their dad while she is looking through. Well, she had found earlier a book of the dead, which is pictures of dead people that have been kept.
Right, it's a recurring motif in the movie.
And so now, when the kids have gone off, she doesn't know they've gone off. She finds a picture of a picture that's been removed from the Book of the Dead, and it's of the servants. So, ta-da! Of course, the servants are dead. Well, I think pretty much everybody's figured that out at this point in the film. And so, meanwhile, the kids happen upon. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I thought Drew was going to say something. No. The kids happen upon the gravestones of the servants. So everybody figures out at the same time the servants are dead, and the servants come up and confront them. And they're like, you need to deal with the fact that dead and living are just going to have to live together in this house. You're just going to have to get over that. It's fine. And she's like, get out. And they're like, no, there's the intruders that you keep hearing. And then once again, she goes into denial. There's no intruders. But also, I think, earlier in the day, all the curtains went missing. Like, they're all gone now. So the kids are, like, screaming in horror that they're going to die. And so she covers them up. She's put them in a dark room during the day, and that's why at night they were able to go out because it was night. But so somebody has taken the curtains down, and the servants are ghosts. So eventually it comes out that that in fact the people and the little girl's been seeing, they all walk into this room, and all those people are sitting around a table, and it's really quite chilling to see a blind medium who has her eyes are covered in cataracts, who looks like this old woman that the little girl has drawn, is channeling the kids, or like communicating with the kids at a table that has all these people around it, including the family that the little girl's been seeing. And so she is automatic writing whatever the kids are saying, and it's just chilling. It is so chilling for the children to be saying, for the little girl to be talking to that lady, and the lady's writing what the little girl says. And she's like, children, why are you so upset? What did your mother do to you? How did she kill you? At that point, Nicole Kidman's like horrified because she's seeing them and she doesn't understand it. And they're like, the little girl whispers to the lady about the pillow and that she was smothered with a pillow. But then the kids, when she says, is that how she killed you? They all start saying, we're not dead, we're not dead, we're not dead. And they're yelling it. Oh, my God, it's so creepy. And so she's automatic writing, we're not dead, and Nicole Kidman tears up the sheets, and and then you start to see what they're seeing, which is stuff just flying around, like paper is getting torn up, and doors are being slammed, and all this stuff. And suddenly the whole thing, even though you kind of have guessed by this point that maybe they're dead too, the whole thing spins around, and you suddenly realize, as Jason put it earlier, that this whole film is a ghost story from the ghost's perspective. And that any other movie you would have been watching it from the perspective of the people sitting around the table, but in this case you're watching it from the perspective of the ghost. But it's
from their perspective. It's a ghost story from the ghost perspective, except for that the ghosts themselves think that they're having a ghost story.
Right.
But keep going anyway.
Well, that's pretty much it. Is that they figure out that they're dead. So now they realize that the family the little girl's been seeing is actually there, but they're going to leave because they're freaked out. The mother's like, we've got to get out of here. We're going to leave. And so she decides, Nicole and her kids decide they're staying in the house no matter what. And then it's just, I think one of the most wonderful, creepy endings where she's just going, repeat after me, this house is ours. This house is ours. And they just whisper it over and over as it echoes through the house, and you kind of get a picture of every room, and you hear this house is ours. And that keeps coming back to me, and I just get like my hairs raised up on my arms. So anyway, that's my
and that's
25-minute description of the movie. Sorry, our time is up now.
Okay, we still didn't answer your question about where the.
I was pretty sure she says they left in the night, and in that case, my impression was always she was going nuts. The servants were like, "We've had enough."
Yeah, it seems to be the same that she was already getting weird.
And that was the final straw where she's just like. That was always my impression.
She definitely kills the children after the servants leave. She makes that very clear. But it's probably true that the servants left because she was acting weird.
Okay.
I can almost guarantee. But she says, I was freaked out because the servants left and I can't leave them, and I can't leave the children, and so she killed the children.
Yeah, I'm not certain that that's answered, because I really feel like it's possible that they all died too somehow. But anyway,
why would that be the case?
Because the servants that came said, I wonder where the people are who used to be here, and they're like, they're probably dead like everybody else. So I kind of feel like everybody who comes in the house just ends up dead somehow.
It's a
lot that's deliberately vague.
Yeah.
I suppose that's true, but I don't think it's necessary to read that there's been some sort of vast manservant holocaust going on.
They're not actually there. They're not actually there, and so they probably aren't dead. But so here are my questions about that. My questions are, obviously, it's very clear why Nicole Kidman and her kids are stuck in the house. I get that. You know, it's traumatic. It's horrible what happens. Their spirits are at unrest. But why are the servants stuck there? I mean, the three, because they've just died of tuberculosis. They didn't have any kind of traumatic, horrible thing
that happen. And this will take us right
maybe because they like being there. I mean, they talk about how much that was like the happiest years of their lives.
She says that, but the young girl who's mute, Lydia seems to have been so traumatized by the idea that she's dead that she stopped talking. But she doesn't seem to be happy there.
Do you think for a moment that she would be happy anywhere but at Bertha's side? I don't know. To me that
I don't know anything about her because she's mute.
So, first of all, I get the impression that these three servants, Mr. Tuttle, the sort of imposing, always knows more than he lets on gardener, Bertha, the sort of administrative maid who's now a nanny, and the mute and sort of mousy and greatly wounded Lydia, who just always looks like she's afraid of being struck. These three are the ones who died together of tuberculosis, and Bertha says Berta says that Lydia stopped speaking after they woke up dead. When they woke up in death, Lydia realized they were dead and she stopped speaking. But I'm certain that she was this mousy even when she spoke. But I want to talk a little bit about your question because I think it's a good one. Why, Drew? Are you saying that you take it that these three servants have come back to this house because this is the place where their souls were most at peace? They loved being here. They loved being in this house.
Well, think about the way Bertha and at least the way Bertha and Mr. Tuttle appear, which is they seem completely at ease with being ghosts. Like they're okay with it, and
they're okay being ghosts, right?
Yeah,
well,
they don't seem to be horrified by their fate or anything like that.
Yeah.
Also, there's new ghosts.
Yeah,
like in the same way that her husband shows up and he's confused. These ghosts know where they're at. And
so do you think they're like angels?
Ghosts.
Like, do you think they're just sort of meant to usher these people into their new situation, as they called it?
I think it's
possible. I did sort of think about that. Like in a way, it's kind of taken a page out of Beetlejuice, where there's like levels of ghostdom, and it does seem like the servants actually are a little higher up on the spectral food chain than the kids and Nicole Kidman.
Well, they're definitely mentors. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is they're also there. They constantly are there to reassure, to put it does seem really like that, and it's been used to great effect in many other movies, is, she's distressed, there's things going on, the servants kind of show up, and they're like, hey, no, you're okay. And because most of the things that they do are calming things, or they do things to put her at ease. Hey, we'll take care of that. Oh, you're not alone with the children. And as you watch that, more of that happens. These were the happiest years of my life. How could this house be bad? And acclamation and solidarity seem to be part of what they are espousing. So I think
they're just trying to ease everybody in.
Yeah, I think there's either they're there to take her, to push her to leave the house, which doesn't really happen. So I'm guessing it's more of like, we're here to make sure it's okay that this is going to be your existence.
And that seems to be the way
that
it's going to work in this universe, is that it's okay. In the end, when the family decides to stay, Berta says, I'm paraphrasing, she basically says, you know what, that's okay. You can stay. It's fine. Sometimes people will come. Sometimes we'll sense them. Sometimes we won't sense them, you know. And that's cool. And you know what? It's going to be fine. I'm going to make you some tea. How's that? And she's like...
That's something I have a question about is, okay,
yeah.
they're ghosts, but they eat.
They eat? They drink?
I think they eat. I mean, I think they eat ethereally. I don't think they're actually eating anything. But what I'm wondering, I actually wonder that is as I'm going through the film, reviewing it, I'm thinking how much of what they're doing physically is showing up in the physical world, because, of course, you know, we know from previous ghost experiences of every kind that we've had that ghosts supposedly move things when they're very agitated. So, like if they're really upset, like the thing with the tearing up the paper or slamming a door, that's fine. Or, you know, maybe throwing open a curtain or throwing closed a curtain. But is it every single time, like when she hears the piano playing, she opens the door and the piano stops? So obviously he saw the door open. So is it every single time she opens and closes the door or closes the curtain, they always see that, the people in the house? That's terrifying.
No, I don't think so.
I think that, especially the fact that there is like things like food and drink, I think that the implication that I get from that, and the fact that you know, they say, oh, sometimes we'll sense them and sometimes we won't, that there's some sort of parallel existence going on here. And I think sometimes they slam into each other, but, you know, one is not more valid than the other.
I agree with that.
I also think that they don't see everything because of that exact line. Sometimes you'll see them, sometimes you won't. Like, they don't always exist in the same plane as the people. So it's not like saucers are going around and being drunk, and that every piano is that, and every time a curtain happens, like the doors open or whatever. I think there are doors that open for those people, and that's, you know, definitely part of why they leave, in addition to the seance that they have. But
well, and the curtains, clearly the curtain thing is obviously a real thing, because they take all the curtains down. They're like, I'm so sick of these curtains being closed. I'm just getting rid of them.
Right. Well, also you would do that too if you were going to, you know, sell the house or replace things in the house. Like
but they do that before they decide to sell the house.
But
we don't know when those people come in. You know what I mean? Like there's a nebulous amount of time. You know.
Also, time is all screwed up for these guys.
Good point.
Let's face it. For instance, all of Nicole, that piano probably stays in that room forever, right? But I think it's possible that somebody could be sitting at the piano. Nicole Kidman could reach over and close the piano or open the piano, but the guy sitting at the piano won't see it close or open unless she's really mad. But all of her other furniture, the bed, all that stuff, it's not even there. It's up in that rumpus room covered in sheets. That's her own furniture she's seeing when she's walking around.
You think?
Yeah. I absolutely think. That's her stuff.
The thing that I think about this reality is I think some of the stuff that's projected may be actually somehow made of their own mental energy. Like there is a kind of a throwaway line from the kids when they make the toast. She says this toast tastes different than the old toast.
Oh, right.
Maybe that's because it's ghost dimension toast.
It's ghost toast.
It's made of ectoplasm or something. But you know, there's the other thing that I find fascinating is, you know, pretty little Nicole Kidman, who you know basically just fresh off of Moulin Rouge. Yeah. She's the real the way that, you know, when the living child Victor. She's the ghost that the two children ghosts used to terrify that kid Victor. So Nicole Kidman, if this was a traditional horror movie, would be the really terrifying angry ghost.
Yeah. And hey, by the way, you mentioned about her coming off of Moulin Rouge. She didn't actually want to do this film because she was kind of in that Moulin Rouge place, and so she didn't want to do this film because she didn't want to go into these dark places. So he actually had to kind of talk her into doing it.
That's fascinating.
She's really good. She's really great in this. But I mean, you can see again, if this was a traditional ghost story, like the makings of her character. You know, first of all, she does kind of have this sort of rage about her, and then there's the degree of religious fanaticism. Right. I mean, she actually, if you know, again, in a more traditional movie, she would be terrifying.
Well,
if this were a more traditional movie, they wouldn't turn out to be ghosts, and so the ghosts in the house would be real ghosts.
Or we'd be seeing it, if we were more traditional, we would be seeing it from the perspective of Victor's family, and so she would be this ghost that just kind of does stuff.
Right, but
she would basically be what they think the old lady is.
Yeah.
No, I follow that, but I'm thinking the ways that this movie is like things like The Turn of the Screw, which was about this woman who's taking care of a couple of children, and they're haunted by, in this case, some malevolent old servants who come back. This, she's the, we don't know that she's the haunter. We don't know she's the haunt until towards the end. She's the main character, but she has major problems. And so in that sense, she's like George C. Scott. We are going to do in this retrospective, because this is going to end up being the longest retrospective we've ever done.
As it should be. I mean, it is horror.
Yeah. But I mean, when we do George C. Scott in The Changeling, he has a lot in common with Nicole Kidman here, because, the people who attract ghosts in these movies seem to always be just carrying this vast weight of tragedy around them, and of grief,
also to add to that she's the traditional one, notice also that she's the last one to want to forget what's happening. She's the last one to let go. She's very controlling, and the kids also seem to have, in a lot of ways, they've found the knowledge that you get sort of in the afterlife. They're the ones constantly questioning, the Bible, her motives, stuff like that, in ways that far beyond most kids' comprehension. And those little.
I don't know. My kid,
moments.
my kid is pretty much exactly like that.
No, but
my wife said something kind of that chilled me a little bit about, the some of the religious stuff going on in this movie. She said, well, what if the reason why they're all trapped in the house is because the kids were questioning the Bible and the mom was the murderer? And I didn't want to think about it that way, because it just made me feel like I'd been punched in the gut, and already this movie made me feel sad enough. But
oh God, the fact that the dad has to leave makes me so sad. Anyway, go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
No, I think while kids are precocious, the things that they say, the way that they say them, and the questions that they ask, which are very barbed, and the way that they ask them, show that I think in a lot of ways she is a traditional one. She would be the last that they could exercise, because they have just a different way of conveying that. And I thought that actually that was kind of interesting to me in rewatching it and picking up on that.
I want to talk a little bit about the religion of this movie. So Nicole Kidman's character is Catholic, and so they talk a little bit about where Catholic dogma is as she understands it
at that
time,
point, yeah.
which involves multiple different hell. You would never deny Christ. They have a whole debate about whether it would be worth it to, if somebody said, do you believe in Jesus, to say no, to save your own skin, as long as you believed in your heart that you were lying. And she says, no, traditionally you tell the truth and you die for it, otherwise you go to hell. And
there's limbo and there's purgatory.
Right, and then there's these other things. There's hell, and there's also children's limbo, and there's purgatory. There may have been a couple other hells in there, and it's all really wild. And then there's the actual, assuming that the movie is true, like in the universe of the movie, there's actually what happens in the afterlife, which is deeply disturbing. I mean, at best, it looks like your afterlife can be made up of creating a sort of heaven on earth where you can be at peace doing your favorite things from your own life.
But again, I really feel like, that's why I'm so puzzled by the servants, because I really feel like they're only stuck in the house because of the traumatic experience that they had in the house. Because the dad clearly is not stuck. I mean, I really don't believe
he has to go back to he's stuck somewhere else.
That's what I wonder. Do you think everybody gets stuck where they die? That would be horrible.
Well,
I mean, what a horrible reality.
I think it depends.
If you're going to go with the trauma aspect, he died traumatically on the field. Tuberculosis, dying of tuberculosis is not like it's happy fun time.
Right.
Like
no, but it's not. But I mean, it's not an
house
event.
To be haunted. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, I mean, the fact that they died, they didn't just pass away. They died of a disease. Like, that has,
it's
many times,
dark.
in many ghost stories, a disease or a plague or something is just as relevant as somebody getting shot.
Well,
so
does
I don't think
everybody...
there's any problem with the servant statement.
It's such a dark view of the afterlife that you would not be with your loved ones. Like, if your loved ones died on the other side of the world, then that's it. You don't get to see them again in the afterlife. And then you don't have any answers, because, I mean, there's one of the sort of common beliefs around through all religions and anybody who believes in an afterlife at all, is that you get answers to questions. And it's like, these people, they don't have a first clue. Like, they're like, well, now what? And she says, I don't know any more than you do.
Well, again, that's part of it. It is dark.
Does everybody who dies become a ghost? Like, that's because I don't know that I think that, because then there would be this vastly populated.
No, that's what I'm saying. But there's obviously, like I was saying, it doesn't. The fact they died of disease doesn't negate that there's some people are ghosts and some people aren't.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with that. As well as, like I said, the kids, the way that their dialogue is structured and the things they ask Nicole Kidman, who's holding on to everything dearly and actually lost it all because she was trying to hold on to her husband, etc., and couldn't deal with that, is that they did gain some knowledge. The mentors who come in have further knowledge. They're going to help her. Hey, we've been around. We've seen this. And it is a dark worldview. It is a dark worldview that sometimes, I mean, she is separated. These people are, beings are now ghosts. But it's not everybody. And it is a really, really dark, I mean, yes, you're right that's dark. But, that's, if you were to believe in ghosts, then you have to believe that, wow, it sucks because some people are trapped here.
Drew,
it's not completely awful, because, I mean, it really, in an odd way, it is Nicole Kidman's character's second chance to actually be a decent human being and a decent mother, and the kids actually can stand in the sun. So, I mean, it's not without its upside.
This is my point about it being something like a heaven on earth, and that was like, at best, what I was thinking was, the concept of the father wandering does not shock me at all. That is dark as heck, but it's actually very much in line with the million ghost stories I've ever read.
But also remember, he doesn't show up until she decides to leave the house and go looking for him. So in the same way that she might need these mentors, she also somehow does find. But he doesn't show up until she leaves the house. So she goes looking for something. She's got to find.
But when she asks him, where have you been, he says, I've been wandering looking for a home. Which I think is true.
Her setting out actually sets that in motion.
He says, I'm saying goodbye to my wife and children, and then I'm going back.
Yeah.
So he does get to say, so he does become clear on that. I think the confusion comes from the fact that he doesn't understand why he's with them if they're not dead. And then I think when the little girl tells him what happened, he's like, okay, now it makes sense. We're all dead.
Well, that's an interesting read on that, because that had not dawned on me, that he is confused that he shouldn't be able to see them because they should be alive.
Right.
That I love this notion that ghosts are just tremendously confused all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That basically that the world is like a dream and you can't quite figure out who you're talking to or when. I mean, that is so unnerving, because it's so counter to our experience as humans. The other thing that strikes me about Christopher Eccleston coming out of the fog is another common kind of ghost that people talk about. And I used to read stories like this about wartime. Is your brother dies in the war, but you don't know that he's died. Instead, what happens is he comes by your door, and he stops and visits with you and so forth, and then he takes off, and then you find out, well, no, he actually wasn't here. He actually was killed last night, and so what you were visited by is a spirit. This sort of concept of the ghost being somebody that's happening at the same time as you're elsewhere. this bit with Christopher Eccleston is such a wonderful homage to wartime ghost concepts. You know, it's also possible, since they do talk about limbo a lot, and this might be limbo, they might not be stuck like this forever. I mean, you know, Thornton Wilder in our town talks about the ghosts taking their time. This is all time for them to let go of everything. You know, I mean, already the children are letting go of their allergy to the sun, right? But in theory, it may be that over time they'll let go of everything. They'll let go of their forms, and they'll let go of personalities and become one with.
Well, I mean, there's definitely, like, you know, types, right? There's the idea that they're there forever, that's a ghost that stays there. There's also the idea of that the purgatory is here, and that the ghosts eventually go, oh, and that's, you know, that's a pretty common one too, where once they realize, you know, either it's an instant revelation of like, oh, well, I can let that go now because something gets solved, or it's a gradual, you know, wow, I'm realizing that maybe I don't need to be here, and it's an eventual thing, and you know, depending on what you think, which also goes into, like I think I've said before, one of the more interesting theories, where it's, you know, again, conservation of energy, where these impressions are left, and that happens to be a ghost, in which case the energy would slowly fade away, or become dispersed in a way that it wouldn't be concentrated. And I think that's an interesting take too.
Well, and in a way, you know, the servants who are sticking around and are helping, if they're here basically because this was the best place they ever thought to be, and they're here and they can help people and they like it, it's groovy to be dead and be in the afterlife. If our thought about ghosts is that you get one life and then your goal is for your spirit to go on to some sort of other plane, but not to stick around on the earth and like move sheets around and stuff, then even with the best of intentions, what they're doing is a really sort of greedy thing. It's a wrong thing. It maybe isn't as wrong as the guy, you know, the guy who was the main spirit in the Legend of Hell House, which we saw last week. But you know, this is not where Mr. Tuttle is supposed to be. Mr. Tuttle is supposed to go ahead and just sort of drain into the universe, and his energy will be reused. I think. I mean, I'm really, to be honest with you, I haven't really thought through what the morality of ghosts is here. It is, I think, what Drew said is the thing that really affects me profoundly about this movie. It is so extraordinarily sad, you know, that you've got one life where I think somebody hung up.
No, I just clicked out, and then I hit back in.
Oh, well, welcome back.
It was just next minute.
Well,
but I heard everything you said. I cried and cried, actually, because I watched the movie by myself, and so whenever I watch movies by myself, I allow myself to just cry if I want to. Whereas if Jason's there, then I have to go, no, it's fine. So that he doesn't tell me, I'm so sorry that the fictional people died.
Right.
Anyway, but it was so sad.
What's that, Drew?
I don't think there's anything wrong in getting a little misty-eyed at a movie that is this unbelievably, horribly sad. Like I will freely admit that once they revealed how those kids died, I got a little choked up, and then just seeing how horrified Nicole Kidman is at her own actions.
No, it's horrible. Well, and then when they're all just screaming, "No, we're not dead, we're not dead." That's so terrible. I mean, that's so terrible that they just are so in such anguish about that. And like I said, and then the fact that they're not going to be with their dad. I mean, that's just it just made my heart just.
But again,
so
I keep going back to Thornton Wilder. You know, the people of our town, some of whom die of old age, some of whom die in World War I. None of them want to be dead either. I mean, nobody wants to be dead. That's the whole tragedy of being dead.
Well, no, I don't think so. I think in my belief system, being dead is actually quite beautiful. And I think many people feel that way. However, in these horror movies, it's not the case.
Well, I don't think it's like this in every mythology, but the mythology of this movie is certainly coming from a somewhat cynical place, and which is fine because it's given us a lot to talk about. But as a viewer, when I was done with this movie and I watched it this morning, it was literally the first thing I did. I felt like I was punched in the gut for the first 3 hours after that. Like this is it's an entertaining movie, but it's definitely not a light view. I mean, it's gonna stick with you.
But boy, is it beautiful! I mean, I have to say again, this is such a gorgeous piece of work. It is, to me, it is so. I keep wanting to use the word derivative, but mean it in a positive way. It's such a wonderful
homage. Yeah,
it's such a perfect.
It's gothic.
It is so gothic that it is crazy. Yeah.
Well,
the only thing about it is, go ahead, Tony.
Again, I hold to that. There's always room for a good whatever.
Yes.
That if you're making even if it is even slightly derivative, it's an homage or whatever. If it's done well.
Yeah.
In the same way that I like a good action adventure. There's been a kabillion.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that there's not once there ceases to be any good ones, that's when I'll worry.
The example that I like to use for that is lawyer shows, because people will say, well, do we need another ghost story? I'm like, I don't know. Do we need another lawyer show? And yet, it's a good lawyer show.
Or cop show. Or
right, exactly.
Or ER type show.
Right.
Like
the thing is about this movie, because it does sort of exist as a postmodern take on these kinds of movies. It kind of almost had to be a little bit derivative to work, because it's not just like the regurgitating. It's kind of the same. We did Cabin in the Woods like a gazillion episodes ago, and that's a postmodern horror film as well. It's not the same type, but it's another example of, yes, that's derivative, but it's also a commentary on all these other movies. And
do you think that you could enjoy this movie, any of you, if you personally had not already seen a fair amount of ghost stories in some way or another? Could you enjoy this movie? In other words, would this movie make sense to somebody who's never watched a ghost story?
Well, who hasn't ever heard a ghost story, though? Like, everybody's heard a ghost story. You may not have seen a movie, but every town in America has at least like a house that people think is haunted.
No, and even if you've never heard a ghost story, it's still an interesting exploration of what might happen after you die. So what does happen to this?
But I mean, in terms of the so many of these things are things that are kind of, in a sense, quotations of other ghost stories. The automatic writing, the
well, if you don't know, but that's not ghost story. That's medium. If you've never heard of a medium, you might be confused by that scene, but you're not going to be confused by the movie.
I actually, to answer my own question, I believe the answer is no. I mean, I could watch this movie the first time, and I could probably follow it all, even if I didn't know. Oh, wow, that scene is a lot like that thing in The Changeling, and that scene is a lot like that thing in The Innocents.
I didn't watch it that way, because I don't. Even though we've done 75 movies at this point, I still don't know all those films well enough to think about them. I mean, I didn't think of a single other film when I was watching this. I just thought, this is so cool and creepy.
Well, there's the answer. That's really cool.
By the way, happy gold anniversary or whatever it is, 75 episodes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if we've properly mentioned that. Yes, this is literally our 75th episode. That blows my mind.
So anybody who's listening, send us gold.
Imagine how your mind will be blown when we've done 100.
I know. The 100th episode has got to be something interesting. I can't imagine.
It's all interesting.
Well, yes, but I mean,
we're fascinating all the time.
Thematically, the 100th episode has to be fascinating. I know that we've been at this for a while, so we should probably get our final thoughts on the others and then go around to our endorsements. I feel like we could keep talking about this forever just by picking different facets, because we haven't even talked about the benefits of having a tiny cast. We haven't talked about the amazing costumes. There's just so much going on here. But all right, final thoughts, same direction. Tony, Julia, Drew, and then I'll do something, and we'll come around for whatever we're going to endorse. Tony, final thoughts. The others.
I really enjoy the movie. I don't want to get too long-winded, but I tend to be a little less cold when I watched it, because the way I watch things, it's in the same way that people, I think one of the reasons mysteries, like people keep reading mysteries, different mysteries, is once you've read it, you tend to not reread it as much. And when I know the twist, I found myself watching for the things that I missed the first time. And so my second viewing was a much more forensic viewing, where I was definitely like taking it apart, like, oh, they said this, I should have caught that, or well, I caught that the first time, and so in rewatching it, I found myself, while I'm still taken aback by the atmosphere. I mean, it's such a well-made movie. I had a hard time just engrossing myself in the movie again.
Right.
And that, and it tends to be that way with a lot of movies that have a kind of twist like this, like, Sixth Sense. Although, Unbreakable still kind of works for me, even though I know the twist for some reason. But in a different, my viewing of the movie is different than if I watch other movies where I can kind of be more taken in by them. I tend to not be that way in rewatching a movie where most of it relies on the twist, even though I appreciate, it's, for all the things that we've said, it's hands down one of the best entries into this, genre. So much done right. I mean, I can't think of anything wrong. It's like, well, that part sucked, or this was weak, or whatever. In no way am I saying that, but I think my second viewing on a movie like this tends to be different, and that was my only thing. It's all on me, but it's fantastic. It's so well done in so many ways.
Very cool. Julia, your final thoughts on the others?
Well, you had mentioned at the beginning that we should say whether we had a hard time finding it. We had a really hard time finding this film. It's not available digitally anywhere for download. So you have to go and get a physical DVD, whatever that is.
Yes.
And
horrifying. This is how horrifying.
Yeah, and you have to you have to get a record player, and
we're definitely
I actually heard that this is the best year that vinyl records have had in 20 years. But anyway,
I own a record player. Thank you very much.
Yeah. But anyway, so if you have a DVD player still, and you have an access to one of the few remaining video places, go check out the others. It's a great movie. I don't have the same feeling that Tony has about having. Watching it and having it be, I don't feel like it is mostly about the twist. I feel like it's mostly about the ambiance, and it's just kind of a neat, because if you watch it again knowing the twist, go ahead.
I'm not saying that it is about the twist. What I'm saying is, in my own viewing, I tend to be more forensic about the things that that where they're trying to fool you or trying to persuade you.
I guess what I disagree with you about is that I did get engrossed in it, even though I knew the twist, because I felt like it was about, like I said, the mood and just the fact that you're seeing the ghost story from the ghost perspective, but they don't know they're ghosts. I mean, I just think that's all really fun and neat, and the emotion is still there. So I did not feel any of the things that you guys said about cold or forensic or any of that. I just got into it, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Cool. Drew, final thoughts?
This movie was a pleasant surprise to me. I mean, I was not actually expecting too much from it. I again, when this first came out, I'm somebody that sees just about every horror film that comes out, and I thought that this looked like it was going to be Dullsville, and I was nice. It was nice to be wrong. about this. And I have to say this is a movie that seems to have endured a lot, because I when I talk to people about particularly haunted house movies, this is a movie that comes up quite a bit as people's favorite.
It's funny how people bring this one up. How you never mention the others, and people go, "Oh, that movie sucked." I mean, you don't hear it. Nobody doesn't like the others. It's endured. It's become part of the pantheon of this kind of subgenre of film. You know,
but I just want to throw in there also that the kids are amazing. They're such good actors.
Yeah. Oh, the kids are great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, my final thoughts. I mean, we've watched a lot of movies where we have to make excuses for it. I've even said on this show, generally when I watch a movie, the most I ask, or the least I ask, is just give me like one solid, cool-looking thing that I can remember, basically for the coffee table of my mind. And I'm awfully forgiving. This is a movie that doesn't require you to be forgiving. This is really well done. I agree with you. I wish I were Drew and this were the first time seeing it, but boy, it held up really well. And I wonder if we're doing a disservice to any of the other movies, because we're going to go back now and look at The Sixth Sense, and we're going to look at The Changeling. And I'm curious if, having come all the way forward to the others, whether some of those films will be damaged somewhat, and I don't know. I mean, I'm dying to find out. So that's the others, and let's do some endorsements, stuff that we've become aware of that over the next week we would urge people to check out. Tony, what's going down?
I'm trying to think what else. Oh, I know one thing that has brought me great joy. Is the Facebook page, and I need to post it, the atrocious heavy metal album cover art, which I found last night, and one of our friends, Mark from Psychonaut, who we mentioned before, his band, turned me on. I happened to see this, and he approved me, and while I was down in the dumps, many atrocious heavy metal covers made me feel a little bit better, although I realized that karmically, because I actually like some of the covers that were in there, eventually this probably means that my cover will eventually grace that page, just because it's really mean probably to make fun of somebody's art. But it did bring me a lot of joy, and I'll post that to the website. But that's my real endorsement for this week, because it is pretty awesome.
Outstanding. Julia, do you have anything to endorse?
Well, we had the great, or I shouldn't speak for Jason, I had the great privilege and honor of going to see Sting and Paul Simon last night.
Oh my
and
God,
it was
you're going to give away our age.
A fantastic, no, what?
Lots of people like Sting, okay?
Yeah,
like
even Drew, even little baby Drew knows who Sting is, Jason.
Little baby 35-year-old Drew.
Drew's always what making me feel old. Now it's Jason.
Once upon a time, there was a nouveau reggae band called The Police.
Yes. Anyway, it was such
I hate to break it to you. Everybody likes The Police, Jason. even the young ones, the youngins. Anyway, if you have a chance to see it, if they haven't come through your town yet, and you have a chance to see them, do it. It's such a great concert. Oh my God, Sting was just as wonderful as ever. I mean, he sounds exactly the same, and he's just as sexy. And Paul Simon, let's say bless his heart, is older, but he still sounds wonderful. It's just that he does. I think my theory is that he doesn't want to do the songs the same way anymore because he's tired of doing them. So he's changed up his music a lot, but it's still fantastic, and it's all the songs you know. And I really was thinking of it more as the Sting and Paul Simon sing along, because every single song you know the words to, and everybody's singing along.
What I really admired about Paul Simon,
unless you're young,
he did stuff. He did Paul Simon numbers from all across his 50.
Well, it's Sting. I mean, Sting did all, and then Sting actually sang a lot of Paul Simon songs, and also they sang a lot of songs together. So it was really, really neat. Just a fun time. So that's my endorsement.
It actually was a really neat experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely right. I don't regret it. Drew, do you have anything to endorse?
I have a couple of things. Although one of them I'm not sure if I can actually repeat the name of it on the show. But the first thing that I want to endorse is The Host, which is a movie I saw when it first came out. It's Korean, not the Stephanie Meyer, however the hell you say her name is, Host that came out a couple of years ago. But it's a Korean monster movie that came out a few years ago, and I saw it when it first came out. I rewatched it the other day, thanks to the glory of Netflix.
Yes.
And if you like monster movies, this is a great little horror comedy. The way I always describe it to people is it's the Royal Tenenbaums versus the Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Wow.
And it's such a fun little movie. You should check it out. The other thing I wanted to endorse is a Tumblr blog, although I am not sure if I can repeat the name.
Just say it. What is it?
It is embarrassingly so, fuckyeahfatpinupgirls.com. And
that's the whole title. See, I thought that fatpinupgirls.com, I thought you had added the fuck yeah.
They just reposted a bunch of Halloween Man art, which I got reposted around Tumblr. Tumblr is something I don't actually have a lot of knowledge of, but hey, free publicity. So I will give you a shout back out and say thank you for posting artwork for my comic book and making people on Tumblr aware. So I'm doing the same. If you like pinup art or pinup photos, this blog has a bunch of it, and they also have Halloween Man art. So, hey, ta-da!
We've got to add all these links in one entry on our Facebook page. Okay, so my endorsements, I have two really quickly. The first one is another Tumblr blog called Too Much Horror Fiction. It is the coolest, possibly with the exception of the Pinup Girls one that Drew just came up with. But this is pretty darn cool. This is the coolest book cover blog I've ever seen. It's called Too Much Horror Fiction, and what it does is these guys just are collecting horror novel, mostly paperback covers, and posting them as Tumblr blog entries. It is so great because once upon a time, there, basically horror paperbacks were a really big deal, and the covers were a sight to behold because you had crazy surrealist covers, crazy stuff going on with foil, really like cheesy stuff. And it's amazing, and so you can just lose yourself looking at this blog. So Too Much Horror Fiction is the name of that one. It's fantastic. And the other thing is David Bowles, who is a professor at UT Pan Am, is going to be on a show called what is it called? It's going to be Bat Squatch, Jersey Devil, Flying Humanoid, which is an episode of it's on Destination America, and it's at 9 Central this Friday. And I'm trying to find the name of the actual show, but the episode will be on Bat Squatch, Jersey Devil, and Flying Humanoids, and he'll be actually talking about the Latin American legend of the Big Bird. And I really like David Bowles because he's written a number of books of Latin American monster studies, and he does really a lot of neat stuff. So you should check him out this Friday on Destination America and on Dish Network. That's channel 194, and he'll be talking about the Big Bird. So anyway, that's our show this week. We will put links to everything we talked about onto our Facebook page. If you're listening to us, like us on Facebook. You'll find us at Castle of Horror Podcast. Like us on iTunes, leave reviews, come on the Facebook page and let us know what you'd like us to talk about, what you disagreed with us about, anything. We will totally engage with you. And I'm really glad that everybody was here for the 75th episode. And we will probably, most likely, barring a catastrophe, see you all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, Tom Boy.
Thanks.
Night.